Hello, college football fans and Husker fans, and welcome to episode 74 of College Football Throwdown. We are back after our short hiatus. I am your host, Alex Schmitz, and with me here today in person is my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Hello, Husker fans and college football fans.
All right. Yes, we're back after our last podcast in January. We've had some busy times. Both of us have gone to the land of the rising sun, Japan, to visit my sister, your daughter, who's studying abroad there. There's been a lot going on here, but you happen to be in town coming back from Japan here in LA. So we thought we should get together, do a podcast. And it just so happens that this weekend was the weekend of the spring game for Nebraska football, as well as several other programs. So we'll be talking about that, as well as some of the news that has happened in the last few months, including our new basketball coach and all that sort of stuff. But before we dive into that, I believe we both have a beer to take care of.
We do, and we have a wonderful option today. It's one of the finest premium beers from the great country of Mexico. It's called Bohemia, and it's a wonderful kind of German Pilsner-based type of beer, but has been being brewed in Mexico since 1905. One of my favorite Mexican beers. So, cheers to you.
All right. Cheers.
Whoa, that was loud. Very nice cold beverage.
There we go. All right.
Now, kind of hard to find, so it's nice when I can find it, and I found that in the liquor store.
There we go. And you may also hear our voices a little bit differently. Now, we're recording for the first time out of a fancy Yeti microphone that I was gifted by some of my friends here in LA for my birthday this year.
Oh, right.
So hopefully I'll be using this going forward for our future podcasts.
That's outstanding.
That's right.
We're going high tech, baby.
That's right. As high tech as it gets here. So in this College Football Throwdown podcast by college football fans for college football fans, we're going to start things off by diving into the meat and potatoes, the spring game that happened today for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. We went to a specific bar. It took us about an hour to get there, but it was Danny K's, which is a famous spot here in the LA area for Nebraska fans. And I had never been there before, but you had, so we went out of our way to watch the game there, and there were a few other Nebraska faithful to watch the game with us, as well as your brother AJ, who happened to be in town.
Yes.
So it was a good time all around there. And the game ended up turning out to be a red victory of 24-13. Nothing too crazy there in terms of score or too unpredictable in terms of how the game went. We knew that we had several players out with injuries or who just weren't going to be participating. So we knew that the offense wasn't going to be as explosive as we might expect to see it in the season, that Adrian wasn't going to play for that long, that coach wanted to give the other quarterbacks some more time to get some reps in, things of that nature. So one of the general takeaways I would say is that the defense had some good plays. Now whether that was the offense messing up or the defense making plays, sometimes it's hard to judge, especially when there's so many second and third string guys out there. But like you really liked Lamar Jackson, where he batted the ball away that was right in the end zone. It was in the guy's hands, and he just hit it out.
Right. He had some great breakup techniques. The guys, there were a number of interceptions today during the course of the game. Some that were allowed, some that were called off. The play was called off before the interception occurred, so it didn't actually count. But it was the fact that they were in position and then were able to actually react and make the catch. I think if you listen to the defensive coaches, they would share with you that last year we were getting to the right spots, occasionally getting past breakups, but gave up a lot of opportunities for potential interceptions until a little later in the season. And so being a little bit of a ball hawk as a defensive back is an important characteristic, especially in Shenander's kind of aggressive style of defense. So it was good to see guys actually making the catch on the interception.
I totally agree. And there were several interceptions, even though there was one where it was an interception. It was off a guy's hands, went up in the air, and the guy got it on the defense. But then it turned out that the quarterback had been sacked.
Already been sacked.
Had been touched.
Officially.
So it didn't count for anything.
Right.
But what we got to see out of Adrian was solid. There was a couple of bad passes they threw. One in particular where if it was a real game, it probably would have been intercepted and returned right back for a touchdown, a pick six.
Yeah.
Because it was right at like the 20-yard line. But he threw some good balls as well, and some solid runs and things of that nature. And
he was operating without some of his most premier weapons that hopefully he'll have come real games next fall. So that will open up some other options for him. Plus, when they're able to tighten down the hatches, so to speak, and get a group working together, you're hoping you're going to see your offensive line take a positive step in their, working together, improved cohesion, and then also you're just going to see, the tight ends and receivers running their routes a little more crisp and all that sort of stuff. So the whole thing will come together a little bit more, I believe.
Yep. That certainly is the hope. And then we also got to see the other quarterbacks out. Andrew Bush was immediately out.
And Bunch,
was immediately out on the white team. And then Verdal came in after Adrian was out and got some chance to play. And I would say of all, obviously I knew to expect good stuff out of Adrian. So out of everybody else, I would say I was most impressed with Vedral. There were a couple of great throws that he made, and even some runs where he, got out of the pocket and got some yards where there was nothing really happening, things like that.
His footwork appeared to be considerably better than what we've seen in the very limited amount of exposure we've had to him before, and it's pretty clear that he's been working on his footwork and things, because his ball last year tended to float a little bit on him, and not to say that he's got this super powerful arm now all of a sudden, but it sure looks like he's throwing the ball with a little bit more velocity, and I think that has a lot to do with his footwork. So it's good to see that he's making physical improvement and developing as a quarterback. And actually his stat line, I want to share that with you real quick.
Okay.
Was not bad at all. Let's see here. His passing stats. Let me see if I can get to the passing stats here quickly enough. Let's see. They're right here.
Right here.
He was 13 of 19 for 144 yards. So not a huge amount of yards, but a pretty high percentage of completions and one pick. So he was responsible for one of those interceptions. But overall, that's not a bad stat line. You wish you didn't have the pick, but that's in this offense particularly, you're gonna have your share of dink and dunk type passes, so you have to have a pretty high percentage if your offense is executing at a high level in Scott Frost's system.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, I don't know what that completion percentage is off the top of my head, but it's definitely well above 50%. So
you want to be in the 65% range, I think, in Scott Frost's offense as a quarterback to be running the offense effectively, because so many of your passes are relatively short slants and curls and outs and things of that nature.
Right.
That's just the way it goes. But yeah, so a few stats that jumped out at us. But defensively, we had a couple of players that we've been hearing about over the course of the spring practices. But since there's very few people who actually get to watch practices these days, you don't get quite as many people who can come and give personal testimonials, individual testimonial of players and how they're practicing. But one thing that did kind of get out of the Fort Knox that can be those practices sometimes was the emergence of Alex Davis, who is a player who's, since he arrived on campus as a freshman, he's now a senior, I believe. But since he arrived on campus, he's always been one of those guys that you looked at and said, "Man, that's an athlete." Okay, but he was an individual who had not played football, but like his senior year, maybe I think his junior year, but I think just his senior year of high school. So he hadn't played football before that. So he just was really barely scratching the surface of his capability when he arrived, and then with all the coaching changes that have gone on at Nebraska over the course of his time as a student athlete, he hasn't been able to move forward. This year, he's got the same coach for the second year in a row, and it looks like the light bulb is starting to come on for him. He seemed to be around the football a lot, made some key plays, including one of those interceptions that get called back. But I'm kind of excited about the possibility of having a guy emerge in an area of need that we weren't really counting on. He was one of those guys that most people might have presumed that his career was kind of passed him by and he was not going to be doing much. And then Jojo Doman, a player who people do have high hopes for and has flashed every time he's been on the field practically, looks to have both physically changed his body over the winter. He looks bigger and stronger, but he also played well and it appears had 3 sacks during the course of the game, or was credited with 3 sacks.
Right. Yeah, well, and I was going to say just in general about the defense, once again, it's kind of hard to tell if it was the defense playing well or just the offense not playing well or making mistakes. But they were definitely getting pressure on the quarterbacks a good bit of the time. Sometimes it all got picked up and they had plenty of time, but oftentimes they were getting back there and getting those sacks. Or if not that, then chasing the quarterbacks and forcing them to throw on the run.
Right.
So I was happy to see that for sure, because getting more penetration in general is something that I'll be looking for with the defense this season.
Right. And in reading, I didn't actually listen to Scott Frost's comments after the game yet. I haven't been able to listen to the audio of it, but I've read the summary of his comments, and I get the sense that he isn't overly concerned about the fact that the offense wasn't a little bit more prolific. You may recall last year the score of the game was significantly higher, and the number of yards produced by the two offenses last year was significantly higher than this year's. And I think part of that is by design, how Scott divided up the teams. It is also obviously influenced by the number of critical players that did not play in today's spring game. And when those guys come back in the fall, we're going to be a much more explosive type of team. And so those will all have an impact. But we because some of those guys were missing, we threw the tight ends a little bit more today and kind of showed that we maybe have some talent there in the tight end position that's going to be critical for us next year, because this season we're not going to have the benefit of Stanley Morgan. And so we probably won't have, immediately anyway, 2 guys that are going to be on the radar and a threat to defensive coordinators and them having to worry about where they are on the field. We're going to only have one in J.D. Spielman, who's a guy that has obviously had success, and defenses are going to worry about him, right? So that's something where those tight ends become very critical, especially early in the season.
Right. Well, I was trying to remember. I think it was one of the early scores in the game. You and AJ afterwards were talking about how, there are all these white guys in the NFL who can't run worth a crap, aren't athletic, but they got good hands, and that's, they can catch any ball that comes their way. Because I think it was one of those tight ends or somebody like that who caught a good ball and scored a touchdown.
Now that actually is another position. That's a wide receiver, and I wouldn't say that these are athletes that can't run worth a crap. They're just not you wouldn't look at their stat sheet on for the draft combine and say, wow, this guy is a superstar explosive athlete. You would look at him and say he's kind of slow relative to the position of wide receiver. But because they run precise routes, because they know where the pocket of the hole is going to be, if the defense is in a zone, they know how to manipulate an athlete to get them to shift their hips or their shoulders so as to get them leaning one way and then go the other. There's all that sophistication of technique that allows them to get open. And the individual we're talking about was Cade Warner, who is the son of Kurt Warner, and obviously grew up in a household with some pretty high level football acumen, and it shows. He runs really good routes. He finds ways to get open. And when the ball's thrown his way, he almost always catches it. And that's why we're going to see him continue to be a key player for us in the wide receiver rotation.
That's right. All right. So we've talked a good bit about the defense. Now let's maybe shift our focus to the offense. What were some players that stood out to you, aside from the quarterbacks, in terms of the running backs, offensive linemen, or wide receivers?
I mean, I think running backs did okay, which is kind of what we expected going in, because some of the key players in our running back room either aren't even here on campus yet because they're still recruits, or in the case of Maurice Washington, did not play because he's dealing with the off-field issue that he has to get resolved to determine his future anyway. So, with that being said, the group of running backs we were going with in today's game were guys that we were looking for them to be consistent and solid. And actually, I think what was one of the things that was pleasant for me to see out of the running backs was there were a number of occasions where they picked up the blocking quite well, like pass blocking, and got to the guy that they were supposed to. There were a few times when they didn't, and that led to some of these hand touch sacks on the quarterbacks, since it was green jersey for the quarterbacks. But overall, I saw some good things from these young men that would lead me to the conclusion that if we needed a running back who could step in, had enough knowledge and repetitions in the offense to be able to be successful for a game or two, these guys could do that. Now, if we have a season-ending injury to some of our more premier players that are coming in this fall, then that's a problem, because these aren't a guys that are going to get it done in the Big Ten for a 12-week season.
Right. Yeah. No, those sorts of difference maker athletes. We've lost some of those, obviously, with Stanley Morgan and Divine Ozigbo. Right. So some of our mainstays. Though you mentioned that there's a fifth-year guy transferring in who will kind of be our power back.
Yeah, he's a JUCO, Mills, who was a part of our recruiting class, and he's play at a junior college, and he's coming in the fall. He wasn't able to graduate early, which a lot of times, the JUCO kids try to do that if they can. But he's a kid who played Division I football for Georgia Tech for a year, and then transferred to the junior college. So he has some baggage as a result of what transpired that caused that to happen. But he appears to be a young man who's maybe matured a little bit through that process, right? Like a lot of people do in their first couple of years of college, and has overcome that mistake. But on the football field, he has demonstrated the ability to be a Power 5 running back, and that's going to be really important to us. And he's got the body to take the pounding in between the tackles.
Right. Yep. So I'm looking forward to seeing him play for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there were a few moments. I'm struggling to remember the players' names, but there were a couple of solid runs by people, or where a receiver got the ball and then made a good move,
right.
A couple good spins and things like that to get some extra yards, or
Miles Jones
like
was a player that we utilized him quite a variety of ways today. He was playing that duck R position to some degree, and playing running back to a large degree, and catching the ball out of the backfield, and showed off his quickness on a few occasions. That if you give him enough room, he's gonna scoot down that field. And he showed some good hands too, which is why he's gonna play a role. Even though we have some other players like Spielman and the new recruit that everybody's raving about, but that didn't play today. His name's escaping me right at the moment. Anyway, he's going to be in that mix too.
Right. And last point I'll make about the spring game is I was curious to see a bit of Luke McCaffrey play, since he's our new quarterback, just transferred in, and everyone's raving about his athletic ability, even though obviously he's still got a lot of work to do on the mental capacity. Just to learn the schemes and get used to the speed of college versus high school and all that sort of stuff. There was one pass he had, though, you'll remember, that was big bomb pass where the defender kind of got beat. And so the receiver had some room, and he just caught the ball right in stride and went down for a touchdown.
Right.
Real nice pass from him, as well as then some running moments from Luke where he got to show off a bit of his speed. And because it was touch, he got stopped early. But if it was live, he might have been able to shrug off the hit and go for another 10 yards.
Elude it. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yep. No, he was able to show little glimpses, but he clearly is a guy that will reap enormous benefit from being in our strength and conditioning program for a year, and in all likelihood will be a guy that plays no more than 4 games for us unless the wheels fall off and we lose Adrian and maybe Vedral for an extended period of time or something. Because I think otherwise they would probably try to preserve his red shirt if they could, so that they could give him a whole year to get he's a huge student of the game and already is understanding the offensive system and all that. So I think he's already going to be very, very well versed in that, just because of the nature of the kind of competitor that he is. But where he is going to have to struggle is the speed of the game as a passer. Okay, the windows are tighter than they were in high school. Okay, and he wasn't a quarterback for 4 years in high school. He was a quarterback for basically 1 season in high school, and prior to that was an athlete because he had an older brother who was the quarterback at his school on the years prior to that. So he's a guy that really is still quite a rookie in the realm of being a quarterback.
Right. Although I'm forgetting exactly when Christian McCaffrey graduated and all that, but
now, Christian is quite a bit older. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. Brother. Right. So I mean, there must be, if they went to the same high school, then Christian must have graduated.
No. Well, Christian, I'm not talking about Christian. You're forgetting his other brother, who is a quarterback at Michigan.
Oh.
And is just a couple years older than him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and I apologize, I can't remember his name. I feel like it's Derek or something like that.
All right. Well, was there any final point you wanted to make about the spring game?
Well, I think that, again, kind of echoing Scott Frost's comments, I think that we got through the spring without a lot of major injuries. We did lose one of our young talented players to a pectoral muscle tear that is going to put him on the shelf for 6 months, and that's disappointing because Heinrich, who is a Nebraska native kid, came to school early, graduated from high school a semester early, and now is going to be put on the shelf because of this injury. And so it's kind of disheartening for him. He'd already made the decision to give up, that last semester of high school and, the things that come with it, like prom and things of that nature, and then to turn around and get hurt so that you're not even able to take advantage of it and build your strength and those kinds of things, as well as become more familiar with the defensive system. He got the defensive system part down, and he was obviously able to lift during most of the winter conditioning. But now he's going to be excluded from making the big gains that often happened over the summer.
Right. Now, did he get hurt in the game? I don't remember.
No, not in the game. No. He was hurt in practice / the weight room sometime about a week to 10 days ago. He's already had surgery. The tear has already been repaired, so he's already in the post surgery situation. Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but getting back to my main point, which was that Scott wanted to minimize injuries. I think he's got to feel pretty good that he did what he could to the team got through the practices without losing too many guys to injury, and they made progress, particularly I think defensively. Their confidence is higher. I think they clearly are starting to develop some depth. It looks like we have a pretty salty secondary possibly to put on the field as a group of starters and a few spot replacements as well, which is more depth than I would say we had last year. And then particularly our defensive line looks to be in better shape than it was last year by a good margin. And so if those things are true, then I think that will make our linebackers look better. And give them a chance to grow into their positions. So overall, I just think a lot of positives come out of spring practice for the defense. Offensively, I think the offense's spring was very disjointed, not having
those key players
available because of either injury or the off the field stuff with Mo Washington. Those things put a damper on the progress, and other guys didn't necessarily emerge. It sounds like Hunt, the wide receiver, had a good spring and maybe has put himself in a position where he can be, if not a starter, be right in the rotation of every other play kind of thing at wide receiver.
I'm trying to remember, what was the running back named Belt.
Brody Belt.
He had a good game.
He had a solid game. He's a walk-on. They're very high on him because, again, he's one of these players that doesn't make mistakes, works really hard, brings it on every practice, every day, listens and executes, right? And has some pretty good wiggle. Not the greatest in terms of top-end speed or anything, but a guy who would be a serviceable running back for us in a pinch.
Right.
And those are great people to have.
Yep. I agree with that. So now the true wait begins here between April and August. Before we can really get into the meat of the season. But this is always a good taste for us Nebraska fans. The stadium was sold out. About 86,000 people there. Yep. So.
And the environment was awesome. It was awesome for the recruits that were in town, and the weather was actually better than I think forecast. They were saying about mid-50s and cloudy, but generally I think it was sunny, nice. And so it was probably about mid-50s. But mid-50s and sunny is way better than mid-50s and cloudy.
Right. And we'll go more into the recruiting later on in the podcast, but right. I know we got already today, we got one recruit. A big one who committed to us after the spring game. So what was his name again?
Corcoran, I believe is his name.
Right.
Last name, and he is one of the top 50 players in the country. In fact, we've picked up 2 commitments in the last 10 days that are both top 50 players in the country. And that's probably more top 50 players than we've had in the last 3 years already. And we only have 3 recruits this year. So even though not huge numbers, a good start.
Yep. Turner Corcoran is his name.
That's it.
Yep. You got that right. So that's definitely an exciting get because he was being pursued by a lot of other big time programs and he chose us. So we won for once in those battles.
Exactly.
So it was good.
Yep.
All right. So as we teased at the front, there's been some drama and new coaching changes and shifts in the basketball program that Tim Miles was let go and Bill Moose chose a successor, Fred Hoiberg, another top-tier hire. He got Scott Frost in the year that Frost was available, the biggest coach, who was
the biggest free agent, so to speak, of that coaching cycle.
Right, and he did it again this year with Fred Hoiberg, who has brought on a great staff to support him.
Yes,
it seems.
I think that's what's really exciting is that obviously getting a coach of Fred's caliber in any set of circumstances is a good thing, but add to it the very deep connections that Fred has to the university, even though he was born in Ames and grew up a Cyclone because his dad was a professor there, and maybe even his mom. I don't know if she was a professor, but they may have both been on the staff at Iowa State. And then he became a player for Iowa State, was a star player for them, and then eventually, after a distinguished 10-year basketball career in the NBA, came back to Iowa State as a coach and was very successful as the head coach at Iowa State, taking them from the doldrums to like 4 consecutive NCAA tournament berths, including I believe a Sweet 16 and an Elite 8, and winning the Big 12 twice in those 4 years, tournaments, the Big 12 tournament. So, and he did it with, JUCOs and transfers, and he just found ways to put together a team. And but he also uses a brand of basketball that is very popular and exciting, and so it's going to be an easy sell for fans to enjoy it. And so and then to add on top of that, he was able to get a staff that's a great complement of outstanding recruiters and a couple of old school, longtime coaches who have had head coaching jobs, including old Doc Sadler, who used to be Nebraska's head coach, and he's now coming back to Nebraska as an assistant, which is a kind of rarity that a coach would come back to an institution that they were previously the head coach at and accept a role of being an assistant. But given where he is in his career, towards the end of his career, and the passion and love he had for his time at Nebraska, it's one that he expressed great fondness for his time when he was the head coach in Lincoln. So he's here to stay. You get the sense that he and his wife made the decision this is their final step, before he will probably retire.
Right. Well, and we don't have this on our agenda, but I think we should bring it up. In the pro level, you have Zach Taylor, right? Isn't it
Yes.
him who's stepping into a head coaching position
job. Right.
in the NFL, and he's bringing along not Callahan, or was it Callahan? Yeah, Callahan as his assistant.
Oh, I guess I didn't know that actually happened. But he hired Bill as his offensive coordinator, or maybe offensive line coach. One of those two. That's what Bill would have been. But that is cool. And Zach is such a great player that and he has really risen rapidly through the ranks in NFL coaching ranks. So that is cool to see an alumnus do such good things.
Yeah. So, well, and I was just thinking that must be an even more rare circumstance where a player ends up being the head coach,
right?
To when their old head coach is their assistant.
Right? Yeah, that is probably. I'm sure it happens, but regardless, as it relates to Coach Hoiberg and Nebraska, they have put themselves in a position where they have a great balance of old sage, knowledgeable X's and O's type of coaches, combined with a couple of young gun great recruiters who are also excited about learning right from the old sages. So it's a really great combination. And then Fred, who's known for some pretty wide open offensive systems, has the benefit of one of the better defensive minded coaches in the country in Doc Sadler. So certainly things are in place both in terms of facilities and financial commitment now, as well as the actual talent in terms of coaching staff to put it all together for Nebraskan basketball. So great optimism. And just to add something, because it's relevant today, Nebraska's just coming off of a sweep of Penn State in baseball, which puts them in the lead as the number one team in the Big Ten in baseball, which is where we hope and would expect our programs to be. So bravo to Bill Moose, who's been under a little bit of criticism in the last 6 months because some people there was some rumors about some behavioral issues that came out and got enough legs that it forced the administration, our president and chancellor, to come out with an official statement of support for Bill Moose. And it irritates me because I believe that is more hack journalism by the Omaha World Herald rather than it being something where it was relevant to anything that was significant. They got a hold of some things and they ran with it rather than using some judgment to recognize what's going on. So that's, I guess, a little bit of the new world we live in.
Yep, that is true. There's not exactly a ton of what do you want to say, innocent until proven guilty in today's culture.
It's because there's so much media out there in this social media age, and everybody wanting to get followers and how many people share your tweets or share your things. Those are all measures of success, and so people discard the traditions of proper journalism and doing the background work and corroborating sources and things of that nature, or simply making the judgment call that this information, while salacious, may not really add any value. And until they can build a case that says there is a series of events that have occurred that are a true problem, in which case then maybe they would have had something to go on. And if they had all that, then they could have done an expose, and frankly, we would be talking about a different situation. But anybody who's been a Nebraska football fan for a decent amount of time can remember that Bob Devaney used to clearly have had already a few brews in him or toddies before he did his radio and television shows prior to the games when he was athletic director. So it's not like Bill Moose is the first athletic director to imbibe in social beverages and maybe over consume on occasion. Right. So I think it's a mountain out of a molehill.
Right. Just to correct my earlier statement, I know that there was talk about him, at least Zach Taylor, reaching out to Bill Callahan.
But he didn't happen.
Looks like that didn't happen. But Brian Callahan is his offensive coordinator at the Bengals, who is Bill Callahan's son. Mm-hmm. So there you go. Mm-hmm. That's the connection you get there.
I got it.
All right. Yeah, so it'll definitely be exciting to watch basketball. I don't follow basketball much at all myself. Except sometimes during March Madness for college basketball. But it seems like Tim Miles was kind of in a situation where he wasn't doing bad, but he wasn't doing, pushing the program to the next level like we want him to either.
I mean, everybody acknowledges that Tim was a great guy. He represented the university well. People liked him. Competitors, other coaches liked him. The Big Ten Conference, liked him, and frankly, most Nebraskans liked him. But the issue was that on the court, his teams tended to have a ceiling to them. They tended to not take it to the next level when they had the opportunities to. And he was able to recruit enough talent where there was an expectation of that. And when that expectation was not realized, didn't materialize, then you begin to wonder whether he's a coach who has brought you a ways, but as far as he can bring you. And so because of that kind of, bottom half of the conference result that we were getting with too much regularity in the 7 years that Tim Miles had the job, that's sufficient time that you should be able to see some trends. And they were able to see trends that suggested that a plateau had been reached and it was going to be tough for him to take it to that next level. And this was during a time when resources had never been better for in terms of facilities and everything else. I mean, we were in a golden age of the brand new Pinnacle Bank Arena, one of the best practice facilities in the entire country, and that new arena was sold out for a basketball team that was playing 500 basketball over the last 4 years or so. And who else could claim that, right? Other 500 basketball teams would have trouble filling half their arena, much less the whole thing. And especially one the size of Pinnacle Bank. So I mean, he had everything he needed to get that done, and he wasn't able to. And so at the end of the day, he's a nice guy. Hope he does well in whatever his next role is. But we needed to see if we could do better. And it looks like we've put ourselves in a position, and that's all we can do is put yourself in a position to do better. And I think we've done the best we possibly could for that.
Yep. So now we just see how it turns out and hope that Fred Hoiberg is able to deliver on that improvement that fans are looking for.
Right.
So now we can dive into some of the recruiting situation. Yeah. Obviously, last time we did a podcast, it was in January, right after the national championship game. So signing day had not arrived. The February,
the second one,
the second signing day for February. Mm-hmm. So we had a few more guys sign on for us by that February date, and then now, of course, we're what we just talked about with the couple of recruits that we got off of the spring game. Those are all for the next year's season, the 2020 recruiting class. So, of course, the coaches are already moving full steam ahead in that regard. But let's focus on the 2019 class at first. What were kind of the notable additions that we got at that second signing date that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We had talked already on a previous podcast about some of the players that had signed in the early signing period. And this is a subject, actually, this is a little bit of a teaser for one of our future podcasts in the off season. We want to have some kind of off season subjects, and one of them is going to be the changes in the recruiting calendar with this early signing date, and what are now that we've had that for a couple of years now, that we've gone through 2 seasons where we had the early December signing date. You're starting to see how coaching staffs and players, the student athletes, are adjusting to that new calendar. And at least for Nebraska, it appears, and I think this is going to be true pretty much across the board, that the recruiting calendar has been accelerated to where most players, I'm going to say 80% plus, I think this year it was almost 90%, are going to sign on that early signing period, which occurs before Christmas. Like I think this year it was on the 19th of December or something like that. And so with that new time frame, recruits, the student athletes, they need to be doing their evaluations a little sooner if they intend to make their decision, an informed decision, before the December date rather than the February date. And so what happened to us was the majority of our class was already signed, sealed, and delivered, so to speak, on that 19th date, December 19th date. And so we only added 2 people after that date to our class. What am I trying to say? But bottom line is that takes the air out of the balloon a little bit for that second signing day. But as it turns out, the 2 players that we picked up were significant players. One of them actually had signed with us at the earlier date, but had wanted to keep that decision quiet.
That's right.
So that he could announce it at the Polynesian Bowl game, All-Star game that was played in January. And so Noah Poa Gates, who is a defensive back out of Arizona, he made his announcement in the latter part of January. He's one of the better safety recruits in the country, somebody that we had targeted as a guy we were going to go after and put a lot of invested a lot in his recruitment to try to get him. We were having to compete with Alabama's and some of the best teams in the country and the West Coast teams because he's from Arizona, and we were able to pull him out of that environment. And then we also were looking to pick up another wide receiver, and we went after a number of them. We kind of swung at 3 or 4 guys and hoped that we would get at least one. We did get that at least one. He's a guy that is very intriguing, though, because his name is Demarion Houston, and he's out of Oklahoma. Now, interestingly, I don't believe he got much attention from Oklahoma because Oklahoma had picked up 3 5-star wide receivers from like Texas and other places in the country. So their wide receiver spots, in that particular recruiting class for Oklahoma were already filled. So there was no room for this guy, even though he was very highly regarded. Now, interestingly, he fell from a fairly high ranking all the way out of the top 250 by the time signing day arrived. I'm not exactly sure all the reasons why that is, but if you look at his film, the guy's got some real skills. But there may have been some reasons that some teams were scared away from him for some reason. But I'm pretty confident in Scott Frost and his team of coaches and their ability to evaluate and get information, through administrations and principals and teachers and stuff at the local high schools where they recruit. And so I have a feeling this guy might be somebody who steps on campus and surprises people with how good he is, because his film exceeds his ranking.
Right.
And so it's kind of exciting to get a guy like that. So those are the 2 guys that we added. Otherwise, there were already guys that we had talked about. So I would finish the summary on recruiting to say that this was, probably top to bottom, the best recruiting class Nebraska has signed since probably the late Bill Callahan era. When Bo took over as head coach, he had a number of those guys already on campus, and he had to do a little bit of selling, like with Ndamukong Suh, to keep him on campus, not have him go and leave early for the NFL. That you have to probably go back that far to find a class that has the kind of depth of talent that this class has. And when I talk about depth of talent, I'm not talking about all 4 or 5 star guys that are everybody knows or expects are going to be great in college. I'm talking about the guys that are those 3-star type of players who people know are good, but they don't know what their developmental ceiling is. And they kind of fall into that 3-star category. Well, we got a lot of guys that appear to, from
the
film
rankings.
review and their ranking, that they're that just a cut below the 4-star type talent. And when you load up on a class like that, I'm in favor of that. I think that's the kind of class that can be a building block for Nebraska. And it will lead to better things. Like this year, for example, we're starting to build on a class here for 2020 with 2 of the top 50 players in the country already committed to us, and it's not even the end of April. So we're a little behind with this new calendar because a lot of our other Big Ten universities have 6, 8, 12 recruits already committed. And so we're behind on that number, but our coaches don't seem concerned about it. They're very confident with the relationships that they've been building, and they're going to play it out. And like last year, I think you'll find that they're going to end up with most of their class signed, sealed, and delivered by that late December signing date.
Mm-hmm.
But
yep.
So it's very exciting when this group gets in this fall. I think it's going to do wonders to start to begin to build and add depth, and we're going to begin to see that a little bit, especially with the new rule that allows 4 games to be played for a red shirt. I think we're going to see even a few more players from this class get the opportunity to be a part of the team for at least 4 games during the course of this season.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see how that plays out as well. And I was going to mention that it's impressive that, as you say, we were able to assemble a recruiting class that's better than we've had in a long time here in Nebraska, coming off of a 4-8,
right.
Season,
right?
Where anybody who was watching the film would be able to see that there was clear improvement over the course of the season by the team and some sparks of, great offensive numbers by Martinez and things like that,
right.
And there's just, I think, at least on the offensive side of the ball, there's definitely just that general excitement that like, oh, I get to play for Scott Frost and he's got this exciting offense, especially if you're like a wide receiver, you've got the chance to get some really big numbers and things like that. So if we're able to build off of that and say have a 7 or 8 win season this year, for our season, then think about how much better the next recruiting class could be with some actual success to back that up.
An 8-4 regular season and then a bowl game opportunity and maybe a bowl game victory. So you end up with a 9-4 record at the end of this season would be a tremendous move in the right direction for Nebraska and probably a very achievable thing. Not saying that's a guarantee. I'm not even predicting that, but I am saying that's definitely achievable given the influx of talent that we have and this coaching staff and their already demonstrated ability to start to do some development that we have been sorely lacking in recent years. There are lots of reasons for us to be optimistic about our future, and it begins and ends with Scott Frost and his staff.
That's right. And just one last thing, just because you brought up earlier, and I think it's a good thing to talk about even if we don't go fully in depth, but you mentioned that we're behind schedule based on the other teams in the Big Ten according to how many recruits we already have committed based off of this earlier signing period in December. Now, of course, teams are being more aggressive with recruiting even earlier than before, which obviously
and the student athletes too,
right? And obviously everything was trending that way from the start.
Yeah.
But then they had to wait and all the way until after Christmas into the next new year until that February signing date to actually get things going.
Right.
The advantage of the new signing date is that they get to sign, then have it all over with and be with their families for Christmas and not have to worry about it and be able to focus on their future at their new college and things like that, which I think all in general is a positive change.
I think it's great.
So would you say that the overall time probably that they're like in the serious recruiting mode probably is the same as it was before. It's just been shifted back a couple months.
Yeah,
now.
earlier. Yeah. I would absolutely say that's true. And they've also changed some other rules, like they now allow early visits. In fact, today we had one or possibly two official visits that occurred today. So allowing schools to do that, which was not allowed before, is going to allow them to utilize this spring time frame and then the early summer time frame to get some players in who might want to make that decision a little earlier. Because frankly, with the increased time, if you play football, you're playing a football game every Friday or Saturday night. Once your football season starts as a high school senior, it may be hard to get 5 visits in, which is why the visits used to occur in January and February when their football season was over, and then they could carve out a weekend, right? And if they were playing, say, a winter sport like basketball or wrestling, okay, they maybe miss one weekend of basketball early in their basketball season. Maybe not the end of the world, but it's a much bigger deal to miss a football game, right? So that's not really an option for them to miss one of their team's games their senior year so they can go on a football recruiting visit. It would be kind of counterproductive, right? So now, if you want to do a due diligence type of approach to evaluating your options for football, it makes sense that you would want to do a lot of that visiting and hone in on 2 or 3 of your top candidates before the fall ever comes. And then maybe you do your final couple of official visits to see game day at your finalists. But if you're still deciding among 7 or 8 schools and it's October, you're kind of screwed. You're scrambling to fit them all in. You know what I mean?
Right.
Weekend after weekend after weekend.
And I remember in our past conversations, one of our past conversations about this new recruiting period and how it might affect things, we mentioned, there may be some players who purposefully don't sign in December and wait till the February date because they enjoy, being in the spotlight and the center of attention and all the craziness and attention that comes from the recruiting thing, that they want to kind of milk that more, to try to get the best options.
Or they believe they'll get a better option because there's it's a roll of the dice, but they could potentially get higher level schools, if you will, right? The higher up the food chain, if you will, in terms of tradition and likely success,
right?
By being patient, going through the process, getting past that December signing date, and then because you choose to make your decision later, now anybody that has an opening and has a need in the skill that you have, if you're a defensive back or a linebacker, whatever you play, now all of a sudden you're going to get a bunch of concentrated effort on you because they don't have to sit there and continue to babysit the other 22 kids in their recruiting class. Those guys are now signed, sealed, and delivered. They don't have to worry about them falling off the wagon. So now all their focus is on you and a few other targeted people.
With what you just said about the fact that it's like 80 to maybe even 90% of the student athletes are choosing to sign by that early signing period, it seems like
this is a smaller group.
Right. Or just that trend isn't playing out, at least for a lot of the top tier talent. Like a lot of them are signing early, like making their commitments and
correct, because
getting it over with.
Yeah, there's so much in that too. Like, I mean, in fact, I think one of them not only is it Tanner Corcoran or Turner?
Turner.
Turner. Okay. The significance of his commitment to Nebraska is twofold. One, obviously, we want to get a top recruit like that anytime you can get him, then the sooner the better. But equally so is peer recruiting continues to become more and more important. And so having premier players recruiting on your behalf for your team can lead to kind of a Pied Piper syndrome where they're able to draw other premier players that want to play with them. And that's particularly true in quarterbacks, which is why teams really work hard to get their quarterback in the fold early so he can begin to peer recruit for all the other skill positions on offense, right? And say, come play with me, and if he's a highly regarded player, people are going to be like, yeah, I'd love to catch footballs from him for the next 4 years.
Right. And in the social media age, now players have their own voice and soapbox.
And I think because of our circumstance, that's why Nebraska's coaching staff isn't overly concerned about having only 3 commits at this time, is that those 3 commits are our quarterback of choice, the guy that we wanted, that's committed to us almost 9 or 10 months ago, and he's not even entered he's still in his junior year. He's not even entered his senior year yet, but he already committed to us. Now he's starting to get a lot of attention from other people, even though he's committed to us, but he's pretty sold on Nebraska and has been for some time. So our relationship with him is now quite deep, right? So he's already peer recruiting for us.
Right.
And then you combine that with the fact that we got the number 1 player in the state of Nebraska who's a wide receiver who wants to catch balls from this high school quarterback for the next 4 years of their careers together, right? And now you got the offensive tackle, the most critical position on the line is left tackle, and we just recruited one of the top left tackles in the country. So now we've got some of the anchors of the offense are all in place for Nebraska, and they're going to be able to recruit around that now. And so I think it bodes well for the overall offensive skill talent that we're going to be able to get in this recruiting class. That becomes very important.
Yep. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. All right. Well, I think this is the point where we wrap up the podcast.
Yes.
Another successful discussion here. We hope to do more episodes, maybe on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, talking about any updates from the Nebraska program, as well as some of these more general topics within college football, such as talking about refereeing, the overall kind of mentality of the current system and how we might like to change it to improve it for the future, and things of that nature. We've talked about the players sitting out of bowl games in the past, but I think that might be worth going more in depth, just because it seems like it's something that's only going to get
trending,
more and more prominent as the years go on. So there's always plenty to talk about in the world of college football.
That's right.
So if you all out there enjoyed listening to this, you can find us online at footballthrowdown.podomatic.com. You can search for College Football Throwdown on iTunes or on Apple Podcasts and find us there. You can leave a rating or review. We always like hearing back from the fans. Constructive criticism is appreciated. You can also email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. If you want to give us some more feedback directly there, we're happy to read questions out on the air and things of that nature. So thank you for being here in person with me, Dad, to discuss the spring game of Nebraska football.
It was such a joy to be able to do that with you and Brother AJ today. It's been great to be able to do this together a few times here in the last few months, and it's just more fun when we can do it together, like we used to when you were growing up.
That's right. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.